to talk about how Kerry County Council worked with the community and developed a community response forum to deal with accommodation and other needs arriving from the Ukrainian refugees arriving into this country. Will you please welcome Director of Services, Economic and Community Development with Kerry County Council, Niamh O'Sullivan, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning. Thanks, Jonathan. Delighted to represent the Kingdom of Kerry today. I said I had to mention that. So, look, delighted to be given the opportunity. So, just want to thank NOAC, the CCMA, and the LGMA for recognising the work that local authorities are doing. And I suppose the example I'm going to talk about today, I suppose the community response forums have been developed in a lot of local authority areas initially in relation to dealing with the COVID pandemic. And in Kerry, we have repurposed that to deal and support with the Ukrainians arriving across the country and in particularly in our own counties. So just in relation to my presentation, I'm just going to go through kind of the overview of the current situation in Kerry. I'm going to talk about the Community Response Forum, who's on it. It's a multi-agency. I'm here representing, I think a lot of them are logged on online, so I'll say hello to all of them there in the Kingdom. So look, it's a multi-agency response and a community response to another crisis that the local authority have let out. And I think the great success of the Community Response Forum is that it's a local authority-led response. And I think we have shown our leadership in dealing with the COVID crisis and more recently now in dealing with the number of Ukrainians fleeing the war. We would have conducted a survey of integration needs with the Ukrainian community in Kerry. We have a number of collaborative working groups established. So I think a lot of my presentation is around the importance of a high-level governance structure in dealing with situations like that and how it has proven to be very successful in Kerry. That collaborative working is critical to the success of this model. As a result of all the agencies working together, there are a number of integration response initiatives that have been developed in Kerry as well. So I'm just going to give you a flavour of some of them. And a lot of these responses were as a result of the survey that we conducted with the Ukrainians in Kerry back in November. The numbers are increasing all the time, so some of the stats here might even be a little bit out of date in relation to that as the results of the survey. And the key learnings as well in relation to the model in Kerry. And it's always evolving, I suppose. We've kind of learned that initially it would have been just the community response forum, but now we have a number of supporting working groups and area response teams as well. Okay, so just the current profile, just to give you kind of the visuals in relation to the numbers arriving into the country at the moment. Kerry is the highest number from a local authority perspective. In relation to county-wise, we would be the third highest county. We've nearly 10% now in relation to the Ukrainians arriving into the country are actually residing in Kerry. So it is quite significant, and I suppose it is because of our accommodation base as well as a county. So we have at the moment over 8,700 Ukrainians, and even since I presented or put the presentation together, that has actually increased to nearly 9,000. So it's nearly 10% of the national figure, so it is a significant figure. It's the third highest county, I mentioned that already, second to Cork and to Dublin. There are 166 local electoral areas in the country, and Kerry has the three of our local area are actually hosting the highest number, and that's in Camere, Killarney and Tralee. And I think it's important just to emphasise as well, the community involvement here has been overwhelming, how they have welcomed the Ukrainians into their communities. In some of our towns and villages, populations doubled overnight. And that's the reality of it. So a bit like the COVID response, the volunteers, the mobilisation of the community and how they have responded to welcome the Ukrainian people into their community has been significant in Kerry and continues to be. And I talk about some of the initiatives we're doing at a local level, which shows that is actually happening on the ground. So it's just important just to give you the scale of it from our perspective in relation to it. So as I mentioned earlier, I think from the outset, back in March 2022, hundreds were coming in to Kerry on a daily basis, and different parts of the county as well. So Kerry County Council, I suppose from their senior management team perspective, looked at how we could actually address this to ensure that there was a coordinated response. There was always a risk, with all the different agencies and people's goodwill, that there could be an ad hoc response to the crisis. These people were coming from major trauma, a lot of them just with their bag on their back, and that was the reality of the situation back in March. So we felt from the outset we needed a high-level governance framework, and we looked at the Community Response Forum. The Community Response Forum and Kerry were still meeting. They would have been developed in our response to the COVID pandemic. So a view was taken to repurpose that forum, to look at the structure there and to see what other agents could be represented on it, to ensure that we would give a coordinated and planned approach to meet the needs of the Ukrainians arriving into the county. Look, from the very outset, most of you would be aware of this, there was a lot of kind of issues arising. A lot of people, just their basic needs needed to be met when they came in. So we had to ensure that the right agencies were around the table so we could deal with those needs. So there was a demand-led nature of the forum because there were so many coming in every day and coming into different parts of the county. The role of the forum was evolving all the time. So there was constantly reviewing in relation to who was on the forum. So the membership grew and grew and grew. I think we have over 25 on the forum at the moment, but initially it might have just started with a group of 10. So we had to keep evolving the kind of governance structure. There was a reliance on hotel accommodation in Kerry, so there was more numbers coming in comparison with other counties. And I suppose we had to consider, and it's still an issue, look, we're still facing issues every day, but capacity in relation to schools, medical care, in particular access to GPs, all this had to be considered from the very outset. English language support and transport, because Kerry is, as you know, predominantly a rural county. So in order to kind of, as the issues started arising, the Community Response Forum kind of looked at themselves and said, we can't deal with all this at a county-wide level. So the view was taken to set up area response teams, and that has been a huge success and learning from the process. The importance of having local area response teams, and we've 4 in Kerry, which meant that they were the main point of contact with the Ukrainian community when they arrived into the county, and key agencies, locally based agencies, could respond to the basic needs that the people needed at the time of their arrival. As a result then, as the time has progressed and the numbers are growing and they're staying in the county, there was a view that we need to look more on the integration model. How can we ensure their integration into our communities? So as a result of liaising with the Ukrainian community and the survey that we had undertaken, working groups began to be established to look at specific areas. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. And I must acknowledge the role of the HSC-led in-reach teams. And this, again, when Ukrainians arrived, they would have been ensured, in relation to social welfare, in relation to access to GPs, in relation to access to community services, in relation to access to schools. They looked at those needs when they first arrived into the county, and then other needs or issues were elevated up then through the area response teams and through the county coordination team, through the Community Response Forum. So look, there's a lot of people involved. This is just a visual. I hope I haven't left anyone out, but this is just a visual of all the different agencies. So we most definitely are not working on our own here as a local authority. So that is just to show the scale of cooperation in the county in relation to ensure that there's an integrated response to meet the needs of the Ukrainian community as well. So I mentioned earlier on, the leadership has been fed back to us as one of the successes of the model in Kerry, that there is leadership from the local authority. The Mayor of the county sits on the Community Response Forum. We have our Chair of our Economic and Community Strategic Policy Committee. Our Chair of the LCDC is also an elected member of Kerry County Council, so that political support has been there from the very beginning as well as support from the Executive of Kerry County Council. The Chief Executive would chair the Community Response Forum. Initially, initially the Community Response Forum were meeting weekly. They now meet monthly. We have a county coordination team. We have 4 local area response teams. And as you can see, we have a number of working groups, and we have the HSC InReach teams, which meet at a local level in each of the different areas. So just in relation to that, I suppose the county coordination team, that structure was developed very early on to ensure that there was a consistent approach across the county and to ensure that models of good practice were being shared. So that group is very active in relation to developing the response initiatives. The local area response teams then deal with the basic needs coming in relation to getting children into school, getting them the right healthcare services that they need, linking them into clubs and associations, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. The working groups then, we have a number of working groups. We've Pathways to Employment group, we have an English language support group, we have a bereavement support group, and accommodation provider network. Now, they've all evolved over time. There was no working groups back in March, April 2022. It was just the County Community Response Forum and then the County Coordination Team, then with the area response teams, and now we actually have our working groups. So just to go into give you a sample of some of the initiatives that we've developed through the survey. The survey, again, it would have been difficult for us as a local authority probably to conduct the survey on our own. This was done through the area response teams and through the agencies working on the ground. We'd have a number of NGOs working on the ground, and we have our family resource centres in the local development sector as well. We'd have an organisation known as Turk and Kazi who do fantastic work with refugees and have been doing this work for years in the counties. So they would have conducted the survey, and it was to identify integration challenges and priorities for support with the Ukrainian community. We had 765 replies, and that was 14% of the population at the time. The survey was conducted in November 2022, so it's something we're going to do again just to see how things have changed. The majority of the respondents were female. There was a good mix of ages and geographical regions represented and accommodation types. The majority had family with them and lived in accommodation centres. The majority of children were primary school age, and 20% were in employment at the time in November. We would expect that that number has increased since November based on a lot of work that has been happening through the area response teams and the county coordination team. They were also asked to identify what were their integration priorities. So this just gives you an idea of what the people have said to us in relation to what they see as a priority. English obviously was cited as often as a barrier to integration. So ensuring that there's sufficient support for English classes is really, really important going forward, particularly in conversational English. So we have a couple of initiatives in Kerry trying to address that gap, but there's been fantastic work done to the Kerry Education and Training Board, who are a partner on the Community Response Forum, as well as the local development sector as well. The other thing is they want to work. You know, there's a lot of them have certain qualifications and they want to be able to work in their field of expertise. So we have to be careful of underemployment as well, that they do get the opportunity, but English again can often be a barrier there. A lot of them are retraining and they want more opportunities to train in new areas as well. The links to locals, they really are very enthusiastic about becoming part of the community. One of the things we have seen throughout this journey, support provided through the Social Inclusion Community Activation Programme, SICAP, has enabled local development companies, and the family resource centres have also been supported to recruit Ukrainian workers. So they're working within their community and working through the agencies, and it's been hugely beneficial. And that's where we're getting a lot of the feedback. But a lot of these people, they want to become part of the community, not segregated. They want to be part of the clubs. They want to get involved in swimming and music and dance and everything else. They don't want the supports targeted at segregation. They want it at integration, and that's something that they would feed back to us. They want to learn more about our culture. Culture Night in Kerry this year, we did an event in Dingle where a lot of the Ukrainian children were speaking Oscailga. And this was just fantastic because this is the language they're learning in the Gaeltacht areas where they're living, which is fantastic. They want to join a club and they want to connect to support groups. I have to speed up here now, so apologies, but I can talk to anybody. I'm getting the point, that's fine. Look, there's loads of things happening in relation to, I mentioned the English language supports, the pathways to employment. We've held a number of job fairs in the county. They've been very well attended. A lot of them are interested in setting up their own business. We see our local enterprise office is dealing with a lot of queries there. We're currently conducting a skills audit. We've set up a bereavement group because a lot of people have passed away who have come into the county. So they need to know how that works here, which would be very different to Ukraine. So there's an information guide set up on that. Child Safeguarding Subgroup has also provided information. The accommodation providers network has been very good in the accommodation providers supporting each other in managing the centres. So look, there's a step-by-step guide for Ukrainian refugees developed, which very much tells them all the supports that are available when they come into the county. An independent living guide for those moving into own door accommodation. There's kind of house rules for accommodation providers. We've had very positive feedback on that. We've done a few media profiles of families who want to stay here longer and who are working and their children are in school or in college. We have a lot of third level students as well. The Fáilte Shock programme is just worth mentioning. There's 277 learners and 67 volunteers. This is a community initiative in South Kerry, and it's in relation to teaching conversational English, and it's something we hope to replicate across the county. We've had a number of club fairs to integrate them into our clubs across the county. Kerry's very proud of its sporting tradition, so they're getting involved in athletics, in GAA, in soccer, in swimming, which is fantastic. And they're also volunteering to become volunteers within the community. So through the Kerry Volunteer Centre, we've run a very successful initial initiative where I think 164 Ukrainians attended a session saying that they wanted to volunteer within their communities. So the key learnings, the multi-layered governance structure led by the local authority has been a massive advantage. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we can't do this on our own. I think the roles and functions were defined and agreed from the outset. Everybody kind of knew what their role was, which was critically important. We've our area response teams. They were very much a critical link between the Ukrainian and frontline services. The flexibility of the local government sector to be able to adapt, and that national oversight, just to mention that with the LGMA and the National Committee, has been hugely important as well. So there's links the whole way up so concerns can be elevated to a national level as well. So it's really created, I suppose, a can-do culture, and the dedicated funding has also enabled us to do what we can do. So look, a few statements there from the agencies speaking about the importance of collaboration, the great coordination as members of the Community Response Forum, and then from the Ukrainian community themselves, how positive they have found their integration experience so far. So thank you, sorry for going over time. Thank you. Thank you.
Niamh O'Sullivan, Garamila Magad, Niamh, thank you very much indeed. I am looking forward in years to come when, God willing, the war is over and we see a future leader of Ukraine breaking into English on television or on a clip that we see on social media, speaking with a Kerry accent and wondering why that is. And I think it's because of some of the work that you and your colleagues are doing there in the Kerry Community Response Forum.